Greetings, greetings. Shout out to all of my early risers, for those folks that really seek to leverage the quiet and the peace of the early morning hours. And you also warm positive vibrations. This is Body Culinary. And this morning, as we have been for over a month now, been exploring relaxation and the breath. And then also we have another contemplation this morning. First of all, first thing is to get ourselves centered because we know that the mind is busy and it's jumping all over the place and it can run away from us. And before we know, we have missed the opportunity has passed for our movement practice and setting the tone for being about the business of getting things done and all of the different things that involved in reaping the benefits of health. So we can talk about health and the conversation is good, but do we get to be about it? So first, we're going to start with just a simple onboard breath that we have access to that is free. And it's interesting to explore and to see if cultivating the practice of intentional deep breathing, if it can leave us feeling more relaxed, more centered, more grounded, to hold on to the aspirations and the intentions that we have first thing in the morning, in the early day, if we're able to maximize the day that is before us. So you're welcome to find a comfortable position, one where you can keep your spine nice and straight. And when your pelvis and your back is lined up, you're not leaning forward and you're not rounding your back. You're up nice and tall and your spine is in alignment. You're not like this. You have a lot of space for oxygen and air to travel up to your brain and for all that nutritious food that you're eating to go up to your brain. So your eyes can be closed or open. We're paying attention to how in alignment and in sync the breath is. Your inhale, you're taking in of air and oxygen, and then your release of old stale air, stale energy, stale thoughts, stagnancy. We want to listen and see if we're able to stay present, and the breath can be very key in seeing where's our head at? Are we running away with our thoughts and all over the place that this subconscious is driving us? Are we able to stay present? That may seem very simplistic, but it can be very, very challenging. And we can measure that with our results as we do a review of the day at the end of the evening or in the morning. If we look at yesterday, were we able to hold on to and to get at least a decent amount of things accomplished on our list of our goals, and also our improvement, our self-care? Are we getting that in, the actual practices in on a daily basis? So the breath is a wonderful tool, one that we take for granted and we have access to. I'm really big on, and I want to invite you, because I don't tell grown folks what to do, but to invite you to leverage the tools that you have accessible to you. And one of the biggest ones is to the breath. You can use the breath to drop you back down into your body, into the present, because quite often we're kind of sleepwalking through life in a state of triggeration with our eyes on what is frightening us or tripping off triggers, and we can lose the connection to what we say is important to us and what we want to manifest and experience while we are here on this earth plane. Right, so take a nice comfortable position with the spine nice and tall. Just going to take some deep breaths. We're inhaling and exhaling through the nose, making an effort to relax and allow the breath to drop you down, present into your body. Okay, here we go. So this is a simple tool of breath and relaxation. It's free. It's on board. The investment is really choosing to pause, to press pause. It can seem like it's such a simple thing, but often we don't press pause so we can turn in and dial into the breath to drop us back down into the body, because the triggers in our subconscious, which has nothing to do with logic, will pull you away. And before you know it, years have passed and you have perhaps maybe squandered a lot of energy or used up a lot of energy and endeavors that was not your intention and not what you wanted to manifest for your life. And that can be cyclical. You can wind up beating up on yourself. So we can press pause and reset and readjust, apply corrective action, and turn back in so that we're feeling good and calm and relaxed, whatever's going on, and grounded, right? So we don't have our eye glued subconsciously, our conscious eye is glued to what we fear in an effort to not have it come to us, but in having the verse, what I call the backdoor mentality, having our eye out of anxiety on what we don't want is still focusing and manifesting what it is that we don't want. And the breath is a tremendous tool, as are whole, fresh, unprocessed, beautiful foods and a movement practice. They can really ground you. So perhaps now is a good time to write a few words or a couple of sentences in your journal. And again, sometimes we take this for granted, that the logical mind, it seems like, oh, this is so simple. This can't make a difference. But changing your channel and your trajectory, it can be profound, profound, because you're resetting your subconscious. Most of our actions we're doing are subconsciously. And even in our best efforts, we can be conscious, but a lot of times it fizzles out. And the subconscious is going on all the time. So you don't have to take my word for it. Look at your results. And it's not about the bragging, I've accomplished this, or like bragging about my label, I've been vegan, I've been raw, and blah blah. What's the mentality? What's the mentality? Are you able to say that? And your health, in terms of your efforts around your health and your consistency and your the joy you have around self-care, can really be a reflection of how you're able to maintain a laser focus on health, to me, which is joy. And the ultimate beauty product for me is health. It doesn't mean that things can't happen, but it's a state of being. So your health will be a reflection of your mindset and your subconscious. So are you making deposits into your subconscious? Because there's a whole trajectory of marketers that are making deposits into our psyche all day, every day without break. So are we aware of this? Are we actively, if you had to take a note right now and tally up how many deposits that you have put into your subconscious, how many would there be? So I'm going to use that for my contemplation this morning. So I'm going to take, because that's a good one. So I myself am going to apply this to myself. You're welcome to come along. So I'm just going to take a moment. And maybe I'll even grab, that's a good one that came up. That's why I'm really a big believer in tapping into, and practitioner, if you will, of tapping into your own onboard divine innate intelligence that doesn't require a middleman or a middlewoman. So that is really good for me. I think I'm going to journal about that. How many during the course of the day, the morning I find the easiest, how many deposits have I made, or can I recall the deposits that I made, that I consciously made into my own subconscious during the day through actions? If that was water, writing, doing what I'm called to do, doing what I feel is the right thing, and doing right by me first. If I'm not doing right by me, how sincere am I in doing right by anybody? So I think Yeah, that's a good one I'm going to write about in my contemplation this morning. That is a really good one. So, in contemplation, you can write things that are coming up for you. Yeah. So, one of the questions I was also asking myself in the wee hours as I move about cleaning, and I call it quality time spent with myself. And I find the early morning hours are the power hour, right, to get a lot done. I was thinking of what are you or we looking for? And is it connected to health? Most of us are looking for relationships and we want more things and purchases. And many of us want to, even those that are going minimalistic, are looking for another quality of life and another way to live and to set ourselves up into the future. And I was contemplating all the things that we're desiring. Are they connected to health? And you seeking a relationship, or is everything that you're doing connected to health? And I was contemplating a lot of times we are pursuing something else outside of us, and it's not bad or wrong, but before we are pursuing our health. And often we're pursuing things at the expense of our health. Isn't that interesting? We're pursuing things maybe perhaps before we get the rest that we need. And side note, healing takes place, muscle growth, repair, recovery takes place in the evening when we rest and we plug back into the charger. That's when healing takes place. The body's a self healing mechanism. And often I like to say, when we get out of the way, the body knows what to do. But how many of us go and rest? So I know that is a big challenge for me. And recently I have been sleeping more. And for me, as an early riser, that does mean going to bed earlier. It means definitely looking at time wasters or things that I feel obligated to do. And then feeling resentful later because I realized it took an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours to accommodate somebody else, but then I pulled from my bank account or my store and then get things done. So I can also recognize that it's people pleasing. So rather than beating up on myself, every day we have a fresh start to get something, to reset, apply a corrective action, and get it done. But are you able to look at and to see the things that we're chasing or that we're looking for, are they at the expense of our health? And I would definitely say our subconscious health, right? Because every single action that we're doing is being driven by the subconscious, and we're also dropping deposits down into the subconscious. So if I'm giving myself messages that I'm doing something that I don't necessarily want to do out of obligation or being nice, I'm actually communicating to my subconscious. So this is like a cycle. This is cyclical. This is habitual. And then I'm giving myself a message. And again, this all comes back to health. All of these little teeny things that may seem imperceptible, these are things that will lead, believe it or not, will suck away your motivation for your movement practice. They'll suck away your motivation for eating healthy. Just the very act of you people pleasing and doing things more to save face or more because you want to be nice to others before you were, it may seem like it's not nice, but before you're nice to yourself first by doing what you want to do and with a positive type of selfishness, paying attention to what you want first, and then if what you have left over, perhaps you can share that with other folks. And maybe sometimes during the course of the day, and I'm talking in terms of time, your active time, you may not have it if you don't have babies. You may not have that time to give to other people because you really need it. You might need it to lay on the floor and do nothing and to rest and relax and let your brain decompress. And if you have small babies, we still need to prioritize our self care first. So that may mean being more regimented and cutting things out because we only have so many hours in the day, but making sure you get quiet time in and your movement practice in and you get your food in. Whatever you need to do, whatever you need to do, I don't know your schedule, whatever you need to do, it needs to get done, because if we don't, we're making a deposit in our subconscious. And this is how many of us women can wind up overweight or manifesting a state of extra waste or adipose tissue as a result of not getting the self care in. So it's a cycle with staying sometimes stagnant and looping these thoughts without getting into action, not being in action, being about the business, which has action steps. If there are no action steps, if your commitment to your health is not on your calendar as a standing appointment, think of it like an appointment that you've made with a doctor for a very serious condition or something you want to make sure that you don't have, right? And you paid money for it. You're not going to miss that appointment. And so our lives are not occurring with that level of urgency on a daily basis. Your beautification, which beauty to me first is health. So if I'm a doll up and I was going to put on makeup, which is not my preference, not saying I never will, but not but, and me making sure that my health, and I'm saying this to somebody that had a lot of acne, like very, very uncomfortable and blemishes all over my face. It couldn't clear up without actions, consistent actions. It couldn't clear up without me having things that were very delicious, sometimes costing more, or just different choices. They had to be pleasurable, delicious, and very, very healthy consistently. Otherwise, the potato chips were waiting for me. So that took up the mental energy and laser focus and preparation, so that I'm not bringing attention to what I'm doing. I'm loving my lifestyle, because what I was looking for was health and to be comfortable in my skin and to be comfortable without makeup. And I realized maybe some folks can't relate, that it all it all ricochets, resounds off of my self-care. So self-care is the root. Literally, I found it's the root of everything. It's self-care. Self-care, even though it may seem like it takes more time to get up early, it has given me the most leverage. I get the most back, more from giving to other people. I get the most out of the investment I put in myself. Naps, creating a beautiful space for myself, beautiful scents, slather myself in the best organic coconut oil, shea butter. Most importantly, the fuel that I'm putting inside, the energy that I'm consuming to fuel me is critical. I do not skimp. I do not skimp when it comes to my gas tank, because it also directly relates to my mentality. If I want to observe love and how much somebody loves, because I'm really at a phase of life that I have learned through life experience, which you cannot Google wisdom, right? But kicking harder in wisdom. If I want to observe love or how much someone says what they love, you can watch somebody's consumption patterns and watch your own consumption patterns, not what you think, not what you would like to be, not what you fantasize about. But if you look at your consumption patterns, if you say that health and beauty, even if you want love, is still a result of, you will draw it to you relationships based on your self care. Some people may think that's not related. It is, I would say it's directly related. But if you are not, and if anything I say doesn't resonate, please leave it right here. If you are not prioritizing self care, and if you can see that your consumption patterns are other than what you say and what you know to be ideal for you, then there's a disconnect. There's a massive disconnect. And I invite you to sit with that and see, what's that disconnect about? And how is being disconnected and maybe perhaps not really sitting in it, or I don't know if we want to say not being honest or not being present to the disconnect, more so because sometimes even if we say not being honest, the ego reacts to that as if it's an attack. And I do not underestimate the ego, that part of our psyche. But if we can't be present to the disconnect, that's big. It's big. And in this in the profession of coaching when it comes to nutrition and fitness, which is big for everybody. This is beyond superficial. What we see on the outside, the excess adipose tissue, I would say, even the acne and all the things we see going on with our body temples are a result of our patterns of consumption. And consumption could be how much time I'm in front of the screen, or how much time am I in front of other people listening or participating in activities that are not serving my health, my relaxation, my beauty, that are not fueling me. They're not inspiring me, but I feel obligated to do it, or it's so comfortable, or it's the cultural pattern. This is what we do. It's kind of like sleepwalking through life. So I'm not going to drag this out today. This is just the power hour for me. Like, I am an early riser. It is the most beautiful time. There are other beautiful times of the day, but it's the most beautiful time of the day. I use this time to center and ground myself. And I don't make no sprouts about coming in the middle of the day before I consume and before I go to rest, to recalibrate, because there is a lot competing intentionally for your psyche and for your subconscious, which is fueling most of your actions in the present. There's so much programming that is activated and triggered all day, whether you feel like you're a conscious, nice person or not. We are being driven, these computers, this primal reptilian part of our brain is reacting out of triggers all day, every day. And so we may even be accomplished in some areas, but I think I've observed most human beings, we're not present to our health, right? Which is relaxation, right? Which is being mindful of our energy consumptions and our patterns of consumption and why we're consuming whatever it is that we are consuming. So these are just the contemplations for the day. You're welcome to turn this on and take 5 minutes to lay on your floor. I'm big on laying on the floor and doing nothing. Laying on the floor in rest pose, shavasana pose. Some people call it corpse pose. But just resting on the floor and doing nothing, and observing the breath and dropping back down into your body, grounding. It is so practical. No religion required, no gurus required. There are tools that we have access to. How do you overcome habits you would like to ditch? Greetings, flower. How do I overcome habits? I would say first, and I would say it's a process. So even if I tell you, we can have a tendency to be very intellectual about it. I think it's very important, and something that we're observing in the what I call after several decades, over 3 decades in nutrition and health and fitness, and seeing so many clients. I would say awareness is very important. Many of us intellectual, with the smart intellectual people that we are, we have a tendency to want to skip through the process. We want to jump over the process. So I've seen this as someone that's worked and has been trained in nutritional fasting. I see this in a fasting process, right? So for example, people, when I'm going to do a 21-day fast, I'm going to do a 40-day fast, I do a water fast, I notice most likely most people do not prepare for it, are not clear on what they would like their life to be like after, and what their intentions are for changing certain habits. The commitment to doing certain things is not really there in terms of like the big enough why. Why am I doing it? And even when folks have a big enough why, I notice that many people are not identifying their triggers. So there's so many things that I would also say. And then there are different things that come up to the surface that are so automatic, I don't think that we acknowledge, like the judgments, right? There's an internal dialogue. There's a part of our psyche. There's a part of our psyche. We have the brain and the mental activity in different parts of our psyche, how we process information. And it's subconscious, right? Which I think they say 90%, if not more, of our actions are driven by our subconscious. I don't think we're really understanding how our mind, our mental activity works. our subconscious mind. That can be a whole rabbit hole that you can feel very overwhelmed with, and you're like, screw it, But I think just a comprehensive, basic understanding of, for example, how we process trauma can be very effective at helping us to get to these habits. It's the why, right? How many of us have a whole cabinet full of supplements that we've invested in? Well, not anymore. But I bought everything at the health food store. I bought everything when it came to my skin. I remember benzoyl peroxide, Proactive, salicylic acid, then everything natural in the food co-op. I mean, expensive stuff and supplements and B12 and this like cobalamin and all this natural stuff, and then Bach flower remedies. I've spent a gazillion dollars when it comes to supplements, juicers, workshops, and I don't regret that, the investment and the intention, but I've learned certain things. And so to put it simply, I don't think we have an effective strategy at letting go of our habits. I think we think it's really, really simple. It is, but then again, it ain't, because I don't think we're understanding the technology of our psyche, the technology, say, for example, of what influences behavior. For example, you may not realize that some of the pleasant habits that you have, you may not realize that certain things that are pleasurable are triggering and tripping off things in your subconscious that are having you do certain things. Like, let's say, for example, as someone that used to eat lots of Pringles, I was a junk food junkie. And it showed up on my face, and most likely I could easily gain weight and be obese because I come from a family history of morbid obesity and other diseases, but that's another story. So I could see patterns. Fortunately for me, even as a young person, I could see and notice patterns. I think also women, because of the way our bodies are wired, we're more likely to notice patterns, right? Whether you have children, offspring or not, our very body, right, is tuned into a menstrual cycle. So we are wired to understand patterns. Children are 9 months, so our bodies are built into cycles, and understanding the cycle of when a child walks and when a child can hold themselves upright. We have to understand cycles. Our biology requires it. So I look to leverage habits, and I look to leverage cycles, because those things, it's like finding, well, for example, if I'm going to be a creature of habit, here's a simple technique. I just give you a gem. This might seem overly simple. If I know we can be lazy creatures of habits, then if I put a 16 or 32 ounce bottle of water and I have to pass it every morning en route to the bathroom, then I know if it's there and if it's in a beautiful glass, I'm likely to pick it up and drink it. If I know that, and I've done these experiments with clients and even my own family, if I have the most exquisite, really beautiful bowl, attractive, right? Because we like things that are attractive as human beings. Yes, we do. If I put the most attractive, exquisite bowl of fruit on the table, I've watched family members, and I've done experiments where I have put so much fruits and vegetables on the table on purpose, was spilling off the table, that people out of laziness would pick it up and eat it. So I will leverage my own psyche. I think we have not been trained. We come out of school not really understanding our psyche when marketers do. We've come out of school not really comprehending our basic body functions. There's a lot of things. We do pick up some skills. There are some things we may learn how to count. So we can count change at the store and make transactions and purchase things. But there's a lot about our own psyche that we haven't been schooled on. And I think, as someone that grew up in a very religious family, I figured out as a very young woman, that from religion, there were certain skills and certain distinctions that I didn't get. And I was given more stories and anecdotes than I was given life skills and comprehension of how my psyche works, how programming works, how triggers work. And I was told to pray over everything. So I could recognize a pattern. I could also recognize that most of my family and community that although we went to church, and I think there are some benefits, there can be benefits into any kind of practices because we are ritualistic beings and habitual beings and social beings. I could definitely see that based on results, economic results, health results, communication skill lacking results, certain patterns in terms of uh, just our health, that something was missing, some life skills. I can recognize there's something that I'm not aware of. There's something, and all groups of people have their challenges, but it's something that these people are aware of that we're not aware of. And it's something I'm not getting here. So it made me curious about results, about human excellence, about habits. What is driving? I'm always fascinated by what drives and motivates us to consume the way that we do, to have habits that are self-sabotaging. So that is a type of inner work. We hear all the time, all these cliche, all these memes. That is a type of inner work, or a type of, there are some mental gymnastics. So I think there's a balance between being consumed down a rabbit hole of mental gymnastics, stretching the mind, being open. Sometimes we may think that we're intellectually open, but we're not open because there's a part of our psyche that doesn't want to be open, right? Because it's defending itself. So that's a whole rabbit hole. We don't want to get stuck in the rabbit hole because ideally we want to get into action around what we say is important. So if we have self-sabotaging habits, and there's a whole spectrum, quite often we're judging ourselves. We're not understanding the technology, basically, long story short, of our own psyche. And whose best interest is it in? Who is going to benefit the most from you understanding your psyche? What's triggering you? What's triggering self-sabotaging behavior? I ask you to contemplate. I don't have all the answers, right? So here in the early morning, I really like to encourage people, right, in this quiet time where you only hear like the roosters and the crickets and stuff like that. All of us have a onboard divine innate intelligence. I was born with it. You were born with it. We're all born with it. That doesn't require a guru. It doesn't require a middleman or middlewoman, right? But the listening and having faith in that and listening to that, it is co-opted. It has been co-opted by the world around us and different entities with agendas. But we have an intelligence, right? Right now, if we're quiet and we sit and ask ourselves, is there something that I'm not doing? I'm not there with you. So in your quiet moments, you can probably, if you're really gentle and honest with yourself, sometimes we say we want to be harshly, brutally honest. Also, if we are gently honest with ourselves, we can acknowledge that there are things that we're not doing. That's a communication. That's a form of intelligence. That's something that's within you. So again, that brings me back to why I'm big on cultivating a practice of quiet, of going in. And we're in an environment that's not quiet. It's noisy. You have to, if it's a whole lot of noise, you're responding, right? That's automatic. It's like if I try to poke you in your eye, you're going to blink. It's automatic. You're responding to all of the noise. You can't help it. That's how this brain is designed. You're responding to all the stimulus. So it really takes something to cultivate a listening and a quiet. And there's so many messages, even from religion and gurus. This information overload. Sometimes you can't even hear yourself. So quiet. That's why I love this time of the day, because you can start to hear. You can start to hear. And I'm not saying voices, whatever. It's just basic communication. I think spirituality, I find, because I don't see how you can not be spiritual. Everyone has a spirit and an essence, whatever you want to call it, right? I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about there's an essence, a life force, so something that animates us in our body, something from whatever the source is that we came from, that now we're grounded in this physical body temple, and we will lay down this coat called the body. But there's an intelligence. There's a communication that's going on, and there are different types of communication. Your heart is communicating to your brain. You have feeling receptors on your skin that are communicating to your brain. So you have all these different systems there's a communication, there's a living organism and systems and a whole ecosystem inside this divine universe, this body temple. It's all very practical. It's very practical. but it has been co-opted between the religions, the stories, the competition, us being workers, our ideas of success. There's could be a lot of confusion going on here. So the quiet, I find, quiet really allows me to hear and process and get into alignment with the actions that are necessary to align myself with what I'm praying for, what I'm asking for, what I would like to manifest. And I think one of the biggest tools of manifestation is a garden and your own body temple, as well as your own feelings of joy and contentment and relaxation, right? Even the joy can be subject to interpretation, but relaxation and feeling relaxed, this is why I come back to the breath in the most practical sense. Even if you're not on a yoga mat, the breath can reset and help you drop back down into your body. Because you remember, if you ever looked at one of the cartoons back in the days, I grew up on Saturday cartoons with my brothers. And if you ever see like an animal or a skunk or something, there's a scent coming from something, or maybe some food that smells good, and you're drifting up, you see the animal floating in the direction of the scent. That's kind of how we're moving through life, right? Being lulled like into vices, being lulled into just being unconscious consumers. It's so subtle as a result of programming. Doesn't make us bad people or good people, but it is what it is. So only you can determine what's important to you. What do you say is important to you? What would you like to experience? And it comes back to me, self-care and health and joy. From that space of being grounded, I can make more conscious decisions, right, about what I want to experience. And then that will start to play out in my relationships. That will play out in my life work. It'll play out. But self-care is everything. Being grounded in your breath. You have more of you sit more from a position, you can see more clearly. Running on an airplane. Yeah, it's on automatic pilot. Interesting you should say that. So there's something called psycho-cybernetics or cybernetic systems. I used to work in the travel industry. So in the cockpit, I've sat in the cockpit with the flight crew before, and there is something called a cybernetic system. I don't know if anyone knows what a cybernetic system, you can let me know. But the captain is able, and the crew, they put the settings into the computers, and then later they can come down with the rest of the crew and walk around the aircraft, right? So now we're how many thousands of feet up in the sky in this metal container. And I've flown on aircrafts with just the crew on a huge 747. And if you sit and you think about it, folks are taking a nap. So while some folks are watching the controls, and we've got this big piece of metal in the sky, and coordinates have been put in for us to go to Puerto Rico. Or let's say on a longer flight, we're going to Africa, or I'm going to Malaysia. And so this is a long flight. So that means there had to be, calculations for how much fuel we need en route, make sure our toilets are serviced, and then we hit a storm, right? Sometimes we'll know with air traffic control, and we look at the weather before what storms are coming up. Sometimes they're unexpected storms. A few times I have ridden in the aircraft alongside of a storm, and I could see the storm on the outside of the window. I could see the moon from a whole nother perspective. That was a paradigm shifter for me. I could see it. I could see it. So these different things, right? Or if you're sitting from a position where you could see it, it gives you the chance to readjust. And if you come in contact with a storm and it throws you off track, now it may take us 2 hours longer to get to the destination. But that's a long example. I like to paint pictures. It's called the cybernetic system. Do you realize the brain is like a cybernetic system? So you're putting in coordinates. Coordinates have been put in for you. Programming has been put in for you. Religious tenets, what food is, what happiness. There have been pictures and programs put in there for you. So even in your best efforts, we're reacting to all of the deposits that have been made into our subconscious. So a lot of times you're beating yourself up. Well, we have often graduated school, come out of school. We can count and we can walk in a line and we can fold our hands. And, I got some good things out of school, but we come out without understanding our psyche. And so we're easily programmed and we're easily triggered to all different types of behaviors that keep the whole economic system running and have a definite effect on our vitality and our health, if this makes sense. Trying to make this as simple as possible. So what can we do? This all this information. What can we do? And it may seem overly simplistic, but self-care, not but, and self-care and the breath. You may not think of the breath as self-care, but you being grounded in your body requires listening. It requires a listening and it requires an awareness. Yes, it makes sense. So we could call it, we don't have to call it cultural, although culture is connected to it. We don't have to call it spiritual. It just is a basic understanding of our psyche. And then even when we have a basic understanding of our psyche, how easy is it to override the triggers and the programming in a practical sense? How easy is it, if anyone is experiencing acne or overweight, how easy is it for you to put down those things that are enticing and addictive, right? And once you go to implement them, you will see it's not as easy as we think it is. It can be, but that means it's something that we're not comprehending, something that's missing. So I'm my own personal scientist. I have a curiosity. I've always been fascinated, even as a young girl, about why are these adults doing these sabotaging behaviors? Just me. I'm not judging nobody for smoking their stuff or doing their herb or whatever. But I could recognize as a small girl that watching folks do substance abuse, this is just one person's experience, noticing alcoholism, noticing drug addiction, right? Noticing that the adults were not present for their children. And even the socially acceptable suicide of obesity. As an inquisitive mind as a child, I can recognize nobody wants to be in an unhealthful state. Nobody wants to be overweight and uncomfortable in their body carrying unhealthy amounts of adipose tissue that's compromising their blood sugar. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants that. But I could recognize that folks were medicating and that the food in particular is socially acceptable. That's something that has fascinated me. How did my grandma and these other women go from this? How did they go from young and fine to this? How did everybody in the church get so huge? And then years later, as I grew up as a young woman, folks in the church getting excited because I got a churchy family. And I'll take the best. There's strengths with that. And there's some things that I just take as lessons. Folks getting excited that now we have access to lap band surgery, right? And I'm just going to do, and I was always fascinated. And I'm aware of close folks in my community, family, clients. I've always fascinated. I was like, I wonder what's going to happen. I want to see what's going to happen if folks don't change this. Now, they do recommend, and I remember asking, are you going to go for counseling? Because I'm aware, just in my profession, as someone that's been seeking nutrition and health, looking at these patterns again from a very young woman, I wanted to see, were they really going to do extensive counseling? Were they going to go into counseling around distress and stressors? And was there going to be an ear for them to process all the trauma? And if this didn't get addressed, I wanted to see, would it be sustainable? And guess what? This led me to do research, watch family members, and also research. This is years ago. I researched folks that had different surgeries. And due to technology, you can follow people's journeys. And pretty much most people that have these surgeries do not maintain, similar to the fitness industry, which is why it's a big industry. No shortage of diet books. Still today, it's still no shortage of diet books. Vegan, vegetarian, keto. What's missing? What's missing? I'm always asking the question, what is missing? Do you ever ask yourselves what's missing? Which is why I love the quiet, because you can start to hear. You can hear from your own onboard intelligence. And after you hear, can you take instruction? Can you override the programming? Right? What does it take to override that programming? I could tell you, first of all, quiet. Notice without beating up on yourself. Can you maintain an internal sense of quiet? Can you maintain that quiet? Is it easy to do? Right? It's like like atrophied muscles that have been in a cast for years, and they're atrophied, or some things are not firing. There's certain muscles that you may have the muscle, but it's not firing because it's been active and it's been dormant. So a certain level of humility I have humility, and people have been laughing at me for years. Greetings for years. When I say I have been studying documentaries of drug addicts for years, junkies. Why? Because I saw junkies in the car passing by and in my community. I'm like, why would somebody do that? When I first heard about crystal meth and I saw like what it does to people's teeth and their face, I was like, why? To me, I'd be too scared. And I'm not trying to jack my face up like that. It's enough I went through a whole bunch of acne. Why would I even risk? That makes no sense. But we do lots of things that are not logical. You have to think about the person that offers you a toxic treat. I call them toxic treats. That wants to share that toxic treat. I'm very wary of folks sharing their mental state and their toxic treat and their fun with me if they have results that I don't want. Without condemning anybody, because people condemn their own selves. People don't need my condemnation, but I observe when somebody is sharing their treat with me, their mental state. No, thank you. And I was a greedy individual. I was someone, I'm going to share. I ate cheese doodles off the ground when I was a little girl. I know that sounds horrible. People say I shouldn't say that, but it's the truth. It's the truth. So look at that. Even as a young child, I'm eating something that's not even a food, a substance masquerading as a food, crunchy cheese doodles and the soft ones. The flavoring from a young age, we're given treats. Quite often, moms will give, without making us wrong, will give these treats to quiet the child down, and we're creating drug addicts. If this does not resonate, please leave it right here. Please, I'm not looking to attack anybody. I am not the food police. I'm not here to tell grown folks what to do. I'm just sharing my experience and what I've observed. I've observed drugs and alcohol and substance masquerading as food, I would say, have taken out most of my family. And many of my family and many beautiful things about my family and my community. But if I'm honest, maybe it's just me. I've observed that we have been co-opted by vices and devices without making us wrong. We're using them to deal with trauma. We're using them to medicate and to take the edge off of the trauma that we feel. We're using it to take the edge off of the trauma. So this is how I process information from start as the eyes of a child. Why when I'm watching this person drink themselves into a stupor and they're not in control of themselves and they start to beat their spouse, I'm like, why would somebody do that? But also very logically, because I have this thing about, I really want to know why. So then once, I had a grandfather that used to watch MASH. So this generation, I don't know if y'all know what MASH is. It was old Army, wasn't totally a comedy, like not really satire, but had some comedic moments in it. But it was a Army show and old Westerns. So I had a grandpa that used to like to watch old Westerns and MASH, right? Because this is from his generation, and he fought in several wars. And so I'm telling you, as a little girl, I was like, wait a minute. if he was in several, not one, but two wars. And I remember when I was coming up, I still remember when men, they took their checks and they gave it to the women to manage, to pay the rent, to take care of the bills. That's what I still saw that. I came up still on Sunday dinners, Southern and Caribbean. So I remember those men back then. And I remember these men that, not perfect, but they had a regalness about them. They still wore a handkerchief in their pocket. You would have never seen those men with their pants hanging off of their behind. They got dressed up for suits. They did drink, but they went to church. They still had, I don't know, there's a type of regalness that they had. I remember conversations as a child when these men had a problem with, they didn't want welfare. It was like, we don't take handout. I remember those conversations. But I had to think, like, if my grandpa fought in several wars and he went to fight a war, that was a job for him. That was not poor. That was a job for men of that generation. And they fought because many times that was what the opportunity that was open to them was the military. And so they sent their checks home to their family. And also, my grandma and those women had 8 children, 9 children. They had bigger families. So, wow, what a lot of stress. But as an honorable man, that was what he did to feed his family. I thought about, didn't he see dead bodies over there? And didn't some of his comrades were killed? I do remember grown-ups talking about that man. That man is shell-shocked. Or these people, I knew of several men in my family that the military was an option for them for education and as a career. So I was like, oh, that's why he drinks. Because that's a bunch of men over there fighting and experiencing trauma. No wonder they drink. And then like a vampire bite, we come home, men folk, whatever training they go, they didn't talk about the atrocity. They never, ever talked about the atrocities that they experienced. And then my grandpa's generation, the Southern side, they're on the tail end of having come from the South. And we all know the atrocities that the Afro people of the South and the Americas have experienced. Trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma. And then, my grandma had a picture of, this picture is a classic old picture in my house, right? She had a picture of Martin Luther King and Coretta Scott King. And there was also the triad. There was a picture of Jesus, Kennedy, and Martin Luther King. And then there was also a huge, gigantic picture of silk screen, my grandpa's silk screen, a picture of the Jesus with the Last Supper and looking like this. So these were pictures that were like almost like family heirlooms in my house. And so again, just with the eyes of a child, I was processing this. Did all of this stuff help them, process their pain? I came to the conclusion that they didn't have a lot of life skills to process the mental, emotional pain of what they had experienced. So what was provided for those men that had gone to war back then was alcohol, and for some of them drugs when they returned. And then when they came back to experience so much still racism and expecting to be honored and respected when they came back home. So it's like, oh, that's why. That's why. I didn't know the term PTSD. And when I did learn about it many years later as an adult, it wasn't really acknowledged with Afro folks. It was acknowledged with maybe some veterans, but mostly our vanilla counterparts. So there's a lot. That's why I really seek to understand. And even after you understand that, it doesn't make all those deposits in your subconscious go away. So what can we do? There are many different tools, and I think I've stayed on here really long this morning. So it is time for me to get into my movement practice. But there are tools that we have access to. One of them, I think a foundational tool is the breath, the fresh, whole living, unprocessed foods. Nobody can tell me different. And I've done everything. I'm trained professionally as a chef. I've eaten every high-end junk food, every low-end. I know quality food. I've been vegan, vegetarian, keep everything you can name. And so it's not about the labels, it's about the results and why are we eating what we're eating. I would say not that we're eating too much. It's become food porn. But that's for a whole nother subject. So what is it that you're looking for in life? What are you looking to experience? And is there any connection to your health? Everything is connected to health. And health, for me, is beauty. Again, at the foundation, I love being comfortable in my skin. I have the option if I want to play in makeup, and anybody don't follow. I invite you not to follow me or anybody else. If you find something here that resonates with you, take it and run with it. Take it and run with it and do your thing. But I invite you to go where your results are. Do you have a litmus test for measuring your progress? Do you have a litmus test for measuring how you're responding to the triggers? How can you do any of that without quiet? How can you do any of that without cultivating an inner listening? So that is what I would say is doing the work, the inner work, or I would say a mental gymnastics. It's a mental workout, right? Sometimes we don't notice when that subconscious triggers off and goes to defend itself and goes to fight back, especially if you look at the climate of the internet, the arguments that are going back and forth, and people with anonymous, I can't say anybody what their name is on the internet. People are anonymous and have an avatar or no picture and want to have arguments with people, hurl insults at people when they have a very limited vision from a screen. And what does all of this have to do with people, what's going on in their personal life? I have the video quality one for people. Well, the internet is slow. That's okay. You know, the internet challenges, I know when you're international. So I know I'm international. So, you know, there are trade-offs to anything. So maybe perhaps you can catch it on a replay. Sometimes these things lag. So take whatever resonates, whatever you're able to capture, whatever's valuable for you. So I want to invite all of you to create a great day on purpose because you said so, because there is a lot competing for the currency of your attention right now. This is an exchange. This is a form of consumption. We're so focused on the consumption. And while I love recipes and I'm a chef and all of that, I love food, and food is very essential and it's delicious. Sometimes I pause, even though some people even get irritated at me because I pause on the recipes. There's something bigger than the recipes. There's no shortage of raw foodists, veganists, bodybuilders. What's missing? There's something else that's missing. And so we can hear what's missing. And I think we have more of a chance of making a change. As Flower said, how do you overcome habits? First, I would say in cultivating a quiet, just cultivating a quiet. And noticing once you start to cultivate quiet, you can realize how much the mind is not quiet, right? This is great energy and contemplative energy at this quiet hour. But notice what happens by the time you get to 11, 12 o'clock. You tell me, what happens by the time you get to 11 and 12 o'clock? The best of us. What happens by 11 and 12 o'clock? This is a whole nother kind of workout. It's very intentional. It really takes something. It takes something mentally to change your trajectory and your big enough why. I had to have a big enough why, right? I tell you, I studied documentaries of junkies. People have been laughing at me for years. My green drink. So before all this, of years ago, as a vegan, nobody was interested. I was interested. I was introduced to live foods in 1993. I think it was 93, 94. I got certified in live foods. Nobody around me was interested. No, somebody even told me, you're the only one interested in that health shite. This is what another woman told me, but that's a whole nother story. Craziness. However, we can say that I'm humbled. I'm humbled because all of us are affected by the craziness. If we really take a moment individually in our quiet moments to understand we are affected by the craziness. This is a computer. I invite folks, let me know what you find. I'll invite y'all. I want y'all to check out the process of animal husbandry. Animal husbandry. It is the process. I know many of us have heard about the Willie Lynch story. I don't know whatever package you come in. And the practice, the science of the breaking of an animal husbandry. And I want you to tell me, even in this climate, if that does not apply to everybody along the spectrum where we are now globally. You tell me. Check out, think of the process to get, as I was walking with my sister yesterday, and sometimes the part of the world we are in now, like just, you'll see animals go in the middle of the road and just lay there. Cars almost riding on top of them, and they're just laying there. And, we're like, wow, they're not even moving. Like the instincts are not even turned on, right? The car can ride right over them, and they're just laying there. Or when we ride in other areas, past certain larger patches of farmland, when you see the cows. There's a very low fence where the cows and the sheep and these other animals are. And this is the cow. Moo, moo. Now, certain times of the year, around Easter and certain other holidays, you see more animals are about to go to be slaughtered, right? And sometimes every now and then I'll see one of there's certain types of trucks that have like a cage on the back where you see certain animals being transported. And, at certain parts of the year, they're going to be slaughtered. And then you think like, wow, these animals, the fence is low. They could walk right over the fence and get away. And even depending on where the animals are going to be slaughtered at, there's a line that they're basically on line to be slaughtered. So if you think of domesticated animals, right, and animals in the wild, because like for example, dogs are descendants of the gray wolf. Even some of these cats, they're used to now dry food. And there are lots of, when you go to Guatemala and other countries, there's so many stray animals. So many stray animals. Some places put them to sleep. They say out of mercy. I don't know, so much stuff in animals. But their natural instincts have been turned off. So I ask you, how do you change these animals? How do you break how do you shut off their natural instinct to hunt? Consumption. Consumption. You can change the brain chemistry, your brain function, where now this formerly descendant of the gray wolf is like another creature. They're functioning differently. Their natural instincts and intelligence is not functioning optimally. You don't move out of harm's way. It doesn't occur to you that you're consuming something. Now I'm referring to humans. You're consuming something that is poisonous, that intellectually is going to destroy. There are pictures on the package that say, this will destroy your health. This will could cause birth defects. And we still and we think hypnosis is something like a cartoon. Look at the music. It has a lot of the population enticing us to be all viced out. I have no concern for labels people call themselves. I just look at behavior. So what kind of eyes? Question, could what you're consuming, we know that certain parts of the brain that are not being activated. We know that many of our pituitary glands, certain glands have gone defunct and are calcified. Do you think consumption has anything to do with it? Do you think that this organ of the brain is affected by our consumption? So I have my own way of processing things. After many years, after over 3 decades on a path of health and nutrition, for myself, y'all can do what y'all want to do. I don't tell grown folks what to do. I have landed at peaceful consumption, what I will call peaceful consumption. So, because the labels, we can ego trip off the labels. The labels don't mean that we're consuming healthfully. You could still be binging on raw foods because it's raw. I prefer the distinction of living foods because I do find it's not the last stop. It's huge in our toolbox. But peaceful consumption. Peaceful to what? For who? Peaceful to my brain. Peaceful to my arteries. Peaceful to my breast tissue. Peaceful to my reproductive organs. Peaceful to my mood. So without the labels, you can leave it right here if you like. But I have found that keeps me more clear than ego tripping off a label. But I still have a fried chicken, soda, potato chip mentality, but I have just only transferred it over to vegan, right? I had some of the most jacked up skin as a vegan almost 30 years ago. Took me years to figure it out. There are definitely some changes, and there are some reasons why. There are some reasons why, and it took me years to figure it out. It took me years to figure it out, and so it's it really takes something. It takes something paying attention, and it takes quiet so you can listen and comprehend to what is actually happening. And it's easy. It doesn't really take much effort to go online and to go back and forth with people and debate. I'm not interested in that because my personal experience, I don't care how many, and I pay attention to science as well too. I like to use my common sense. But personal experience, I know what cleared up my skin from all of that acne was food, and it wasn't processed food either. And I mourn the losses that I've told many clients. This has been a long journey over 3 decades. There have been times where I have mourned the loss of certain foods because I did the experiment a gazillion times and I got a consistent result every time I consumed them. When I've gone around the world and even in the States, working with different groups and demographics of clients, if I can go to Brooklyn, to Crown Heights, working with population in Central America, in the Caribbean, African American, you can look at us and you can look at behaviors and body types, and you can see the consumption, you can see the patterns. Observing the patterns is a shortcut. More so, it may be sad. It may be sad. At the same time, I live on the planet with people that consume flesh. I used to be a flesh consumer. I am not here, and I have learned. It's been such a learning process. I'm humble. I am not here to judge people and what their consumption choices is and what their paradigm is. I share the planet with other people. I'm a realist. I worked in several different professions, and working with human beings has taught me a lot. And so I'm learning, and I've learned to continue to humble myself. And it's not for me to pass judgment on somebody because many years ago, my last perm was a jerry curl. But I'm not going to judge somebody because they have a permanent. It's not for me, to judge. And you get more flies with honey. Yeah, it may be sad. So what am I going to do about that? Because any of the different groups, you have folks that can be so-called vegan that want to rip other people down. But at the same time, see, I don't know that it's black and white. I also understand that somebody's very sensitive to violence. That's one of the reasons why I don't consume things, because the violence, as someone has witnessed violence, has had family members, just as an Afro person, like, how are we destroying animals after all that has been done to us? But that's just my 2 cents. Just if you can look, if you get quiet, if you just get quiet in your quiet moments, there's so much you can comprehend on your own, from our own addictions, our patterns, our own what I call triggeration, constantly being triggered to inflict self-sabotaging habits on ourselves. It is crazy nutso, but it's real. It's real, and it's very practical. But a lot of times we're not understanding our own psyche. So I prefer peaceful consumption, because then everything that I choose in my food choices will align from there. It activates more of an intelligence. It's more of a channel that you get on. And the same principle applies to your movement practice, to your eating, your values on what's important. When I just focus on peaceful consumption, when I focus more on principles than people and personalities, that I have found to be a shortcut. We need to be more mindful. We're very disconnected. Yes, we are. It takes something. It takes very intentional. It takes something to stay present, which brings us back to this early morning practice of the breath. I'm somebody that's been to ashrams and meditation. I can't even tell you how much money I've spent on personal development ashrams and travel so much. And I've learned some lessons, quite often some butt-kicking lessons. Today with the internet, you have access to information and people. If we as a people, it's all people, but especially as Afro people, if we are not leveraging this internet, and if at this point we are still choosing to not challenge and be honest in our quiet moments about our distraction, then it's going to be on us. because it's easy to offer you up vices for you to totally deplete your sexual organs. And I'm not saying at the same time there's anything wrong with sexuality or sensuality. That's a part of being human. But to overexert yourself, you're invited to vices, how fantastic vices are. Even with raw food, how fantastic it is to be a glutton. Oh, it's so much fun to be a glutton. And I love food. I love food. I've been a junk food junkie. I have watched documentaries on junkies. So I like to keep it simple and I like to be efficient. So something that can really get us there quicker is quiet. Believe it or not, quiet. We want to get more stuff, but the quiet and the breath and creating a circle of influence and a circle of support, not religion, not cults, quiet and common sense and process of elimination can be so beneficial. So we can shorten our learning curve. So anyway, y'all create a great day. Shout out Potato. I'm 2 minutes late, not watching live because slow internet anyway. So I agree with your point concerning animals. And y'all don't have to agree with everything I'm saying. I'm just one woman that is sharing my perspective. So many distractions. Distraction is on steroids right now. So a simple, which is still a luxurious lifestyle, even from my hair. There are many things that I take off the table for me so that I can hear, as well as to celebrate what I have uniquely come to the planet with my gifts. But to remove distractions, still live a luxurious lifestyle, but removing distractions. Quiet is luxurious. Having lots of space to run and play and flip is luxurious. Eating the best food, beautiful food that is beautifying is luxurious. So shout out Potato, Universally Me, and Flower. Yeah, so I'm wishing y'all all a great day on purpose. Feel free to look through the channel. There are several things on the channel. There's Sister Butterfly and Sister Monkey, Learn to Eat Better. I think there's about 9 or 10 very, very short episodes of a little puppet series to really get folks laughing and relaxed around eating healthfully. And then there are also some beginner gardening. I encourage everyone to grow something. If you go all the way back to these videos, you'll see that I started on a fire escape. I can't legally tell you to start on a fire escape, but I started growing food many years ago in stockings, all kinds of containers in an apartment, because I've always been determined for some reason I know the reasons, to grow some food. So now this is way before urban farming, all this got big. I don't know if something was in me to grow food. So you can find encouragement for that on this channel. The focus here is whole, fresh, unprocessed foods that you can recognize. Whatever labels you would like to choose that make you feel good, you choose those labels. I'm not really concerned about the labels. I think you should go where your results are. Right? So that and cultivating your movement practice, those are the things that I encourage on this channel, as well as a celebration. And for those women that have had acne, dealing with overweight, and very, very fine, cottony Afro textured hair, and you want to be free from hair gel. And I'm calling it Afro-Locs. And I just have this thing. I have been several things I've been contemplating for many years, and something I'm terming, I got my own little lingo here called Afronomics. Those are the things that I'm exploring and sharing on this channel. And there are some folks that are going to be going into the cocoon, because I am big at this time. At this time, perfect time to go into a cocoon, to feed yourself the best foods, to do an assessment, a check, to look at where we are being effective, and to really get started with in the cocoon. Your movement practice, tweaking it if you've got some issues in terms of injuries that are setting you back, looking at your valid excuses, how to strategize your way around them, dramatically upgrading your food. If you're dealing with unhealthy weight, you don't need to diet, finding the sweet spot so that you don't have to diet. Also the rest and the relaxation. And starting your garden. So that's what we are doing in the cocoon. That's a lot to do. There's never a need to be bored, because there's so much to do. So this is definitely a time for us to go in a climate where Afro folks, humans, but I'm an Afro folk, so that's my primary focus, is self-care unapologetically. So it's definitely a time for Afro women and Afro folks, but Afro women to go in. It's a climate of a lot of mistreatment and disrespect. So to contemplate, where is that coming from? And what can I do to be proactive in my own life, right? Who has a vested interest in your self-care and you improving your psyche and dealing with all that trauma? You looking for a savior? I invite you to go into the mirror. Because even whatever your faith is, you've been given the tools. So if you praying, if you haven't been able to overcome certain habits, certain things we're not acknowledging or perhaps not really being honest with ourselves. So I say it's time to go into a cocoon. So for those folks that would like to go into the cocoon, you're welcome to reach out to me on my website, Body-Culinary. For those folks that that were not able to make it to Central America to come to the retreat, there's still a couple of slots that are available, and they have to be scheduled. Only, I think, maybe 3 slots for a virtual retreat. So that's like a complete overhaul, and that is private. So that's still with me virtually. So if you have good internet, that is for several days, personally, walking with me through the market, through your gym, through a whole set. So that's a virtual retreat, and that is private. So you're welcome to reach out for me. So anyway, y'all, create a great day on purpose because you said so. Share this video with somebody that may find it helpful. All right, see y'all soon.